What if the man you built your life with planned the ultimate betrayal? Marcus Thorne thought he was clever. He told his devoted wife, Eleonora, he had a business trip. But he wasn't going to Singapore. He was taking his mistress, Sienna, on an ultra-luxury cruise, a cruise meant for his wife. He boarded the $800 million Odyssey Sovereign, feeling like a king, but he missed one tiny detail. He was on her ship, and she wasn't just on the ship. She owned it. This isn't a story about a cheater. This is a story about a king flying into the sun, not realizing his wife built it. Marcus Thorne loved the view from his 68th floor apartment in Manhattan, mostly because it confirmed he was, quite literally, above everyone else. His world was one of aggressive acquisitions, hostile takeovers, and the cold, hard validation of a Patek Philippe watch. His wife, Eleonora Salvatore, was different. To Marcus, Eleonora was a beautiful, elegant piece of his collection. Old money, soft-spoken. She was the class to his cash. He genuinely believed she spent her days moving money between pointless family charities and planning silent auctions for dusty museums. He called her family's business the Salvatore Trust, her little hobby. He never once, in 10 years of marriage, bothered to ask what the Salvatore Trust actually did. He was a shark, and he believed he had married a docile, beautiful goldfish. "Ellie, darling," he said, straightening his tie without looking at her. "Change of plans. The Singapore deal is on. I have to fly out Sunday. I'll be gone for 2 weeks." Eleonora looked up from her coffee. Her face, composed and serene, barely flickered. "Singapore. But Marcus, our anniversary, the Odyssey Sovereign. It's the maiden voyage. I booked the Poseidon suite." Marcus finally turned. He put his hands on her shoulders, his face a perfect mask of regret. "I know, baby, I know. And I am crushed. But this M&A deal, it's the big one. It's billions. You understand, don't you? It's for us." "Of course," she said quietly. "I understand. Work comes first." "That's my girl." He kissed her forehead. "I'll have my assistant, Amanda, call the cruise line and cancel. They'll probably charge a ridiculous fee." "Don't worry about it," Eleonora said, a strange new stillness in her voice. I'll handle the cancellation." The moment he left for the gym, Eleonora made 2 calls. The first was to a blocked number. "Captain Volkov," she said, her voice dropping the soft, wifely tone and adopting the crisp, clear authority of a CEO. "It's Eleonora Salvatore. I'm confirming my presence on the Sovereign's maiden voyage. I'll be boarding via the crew manifest at Civitavecchia. Yes. Standard inspection protocol. I want to see everything from the engine room to the kitchens before we welcome the press in Athens. And Captain, I want this kept strictly to the senior crew. As far as the passengers are concerned, I am not on board." She hung up and made the second call, this one to her PR manager, Claire Jennings. "Claire, I need a favor. Marcus Thorne has a booking for the Poseidon suite." "Yes." "That Marcus Thorne. He's about to cancel it. Do not let him. I want that booking held no matter what he says. Let him think it's cancelled on his end, but keep it active in the system. And Claire, put a flag on it. VIP, special handling. I want to know the exact moment he checks in, and with whom." Marcus, meanwhile, was at a different gym, the one in Sienna Vance's trendy Soho apartment. "It's done," he said, toweling off as she filmed him for her Instagram story. "I told her Singapore. She bought it. Pack your bags, baby. For 2 weeks you're going to be Mrs. Thorne." Sienna squealed, a sound that could shatter glass. "The Odyssey Sovereign. Oh my God, Marcus. That's like the most exclusive ship ever. I'm going to get so much content. The Poseidon Suite, does it have a private pool? It has a private everything, he smirked, pulling her close. He'd done it. He'd told his assistant to pretend to cancel, knowing the booking was non-refundable. He'd just changed the name of Mrs. Thorne on the manifest at the port. He'd say his wife's passport used her maiden name, a small, stupid lie that he'd smooth over with a $500 tip for the check-in agent. He was a king. He had his empire. He had his mistress. And he was about to have the vacation of a lifetime, all on his wife's dime. He just had no idea how literally true that was. Eleonora stood by the window of her apartment, watching the city lights. She had married Marcus because she thought his ambition was exciting. Now she saw it for what it was, a ravenous, hollow greed. He saw her as a prop. He thought her family business was a joke. He had no idea that Odyssey Maritime was the Salvatore Trust. He had no idea that her charity work was the cover for her role as chairwoman of a $10 billion global shipping and leisure empire. He thought she was the goldfish. He was about to find out. She owned the entire ocean. The port of Civitavecchia, outside Rome, was a symphony of organized chaos. Tourists wrestled with luggage, shuttle buses hissed, and towering over it all, like a slice of a futuristic city, was the Odyssey Sovereign. She was magnificent, a billion-dollar testament to engineering and luxury, her white hull gleaming. Marcus Thorne, in a linen shirt and sunglasses, felt a surge of pure, uncut ego. He'd made it. He held a private car service door open for Sienna Vance, who emerged in a cloud of Baccarat Rouge perfume and a Dior tote bag. "It's huge," Sienna breathed, already filming. "The best, baby. Only the best," Marcus said, tipping the driver aggressively. They bypassed the main terminal, heading for the VIP and suite check-in, a blissfully air-conditioned lounge. As predicted, the check-in agent, a young woman named Sophia, frowned at the screen. "Mr. Thorne, welcome aboard. I see you're in the Poseidon Suite. My apologies, but the system has Mrs. Eleonora Thorne listed as your guest." Marcus gave his most charming, disarming smile. The one he used right before a hostile takeover. "Ah, a classic mix-up. My wife couldn't make it. Family emergency. This is my associate, Sienna Vance. We're doing some on-site business research. I tried to change the name, but my assistant is hopeless. I'm sure we can clear this up." He slid a black Amex card and 5 crisp €100 notes across the marble counter. Sophia, trained to handle high-net-worth clients, barely blinked. But she also knew the Odyssey Sovereign had a new, ship-wide, know-your-guest protocol. "One moment, sir." She discreetly tapped a message on her terminal to her supervisor. The reply was instant. "Flagged booking, 9:09 PS. Per CJ. Accommodate any all guest requests. Do not question. Report all movements." Sophia's professional smile snapped back into place. "My apologies for the delay, Mr. Thorne. It's all sorted. Ms. Vance, welcome aboard. Your SeaPass cards." She handed them the sleek, black cards. "Your personal butler, Mr. Mendoza, will meet you on board." Marcus pocketed the cards, triumphant. "See? Money solves everything." 500 yards away, on the working side of the dock, a black sedan with diplomatic plates pulled up to the crew gangway. Eleonora Salvatore stepped out, dressed in a sharp, navy blue Armani pantsuit. She wore no jewelry save her simple wedding band and a practical watch. Captain Elias Volkov, a man with a face carved from granite and eyes as blue as the sea, met her at the bottom of the gangway. He saluted. "Madam Chairwoman, welcome aboard your ship." "Captain," she nodded, her voice all business. "It's good to be home. How are the new stabilizers performing?" Like a dream, ma'am. You won't feel a thing. Your quarters are ready. Eleonora boarded not as a passenger, but as the owner. She wasn't in a suite. She was in the owner's residence, a 3-bedroom apartment on a private, key-card access-only deck just below the bridge, with its own elevator and command center. As Marcus and Sienna were being ushered into the glittering, 3-story Pantheon atrium, Sienna gaping at the Swarovski crystal staircase, Eleonora was 2 decks below, in the ship's main galley, grilling the executive chef, Antoine Dubois, on his farm-to-sea provisioning. The near miss happened an hour later. Marcus and Sienna, giddy on welcome champagne, were exploring the ship. "Let's see the main pool," Sienna demanded. They were on deck 10. Eleonora, having finished her inspection of the medical bay, was riding the private glass elevator, reserved for senior officers and the owner, up to the bridge. As the elevator slid silently past deck 10, Eleonora was looking at a report on her tablet. Marcus, on the atrium floor below, looked up at the flash of the moving elevator. He saw a brief, dark blue shape, but his mind was on other things. "I want to find the casino," he said, pulling Sienna along. Their suite, however, was where the first real crack appeared. The Poseidon suite was breathtaking. 2 floors, a grand piano, a dining room for 8, and a sprawling terrace with its own plunge pool. And waiting for them, a man in a flawless white butler's uniform. "Mr. Thorne, Miss Vance, I am Javier Mendoza, your butler for this voyage." Javier was a consummate professional. He had been with Odyssey Maritime for 20 years. He'd served Eleonora's father. He knew, intimately, who Eleonora Salvatore was. When he saw Marcus Thorne, a man he'd seen in photos on Madam Chairwoman's desk, walk in with this bottle blonde, not his wife, a cold, professional fury settled in his stomach. "Welcome," he said, his face a perfect, polite mask. "Can I retrieve your passports for port registration?" As Sienna ran to the terrace, screaming, "Selfie time!" Marcus handed over the passports. Javier looked at them. Marcus Thorne. Sienna Vance. "Will Mrs. Thorne be joining us later, sir?" Javier asked, his voice utterly neutral. Marcus laughed, already at the bar. "No, Javier. It's just Miss Vance and me. For the whole trip. You can," he winked, "make yourselves scarce. We're very low maintenance." Javier nodded. "Very good, sir." He closed the suite door, walked to a service station, and used his private communicator. "Hotel Director Petrov. This is Javier in 909 PS. I have eyes on Mr. Thorne. He is not with the chairwoman. He is with a Ms. Sienna Vance. He has registered her as his guest." The line was silent. Then Mr. Petrov's voice. "Understood, Javier. The captain has issued a ship-wide directive. We are to treat Mr. Thorne and his guest with absolute 6-star protocol. Do nothing to alert him. But you will log every request, every movement, and every word. Report to me, and only me, every hour." "Understood, sir," Javier said. He straightened his jacket. The Sovereign had left the dock. The game had begun. For the first 3 days, Marcus Thorne lived in a fool's paradise. The Odyssey Sovereign cut through the glassy Mediterranean, a floating bubble of impossible luxury. Marcus and Sienna were, in a word, obnoxious. They were new money loud, and the ship's old-world clientele was taking notice. They complained that the complimentary Veuve Clicquot in their suite wasn't Krug. They demanded reservations at the ship's most exclusive restaurant, Le Ciel, and then showed up 40 minutes late, Sienna in a bikini top and a sarong. Marcus treated the crew like his personal servants, snapping his fingers for cocktails and demanding the pool DJ play something with a beat. Javier Mendoza, the butler, was a ghost of perfect service. He documented everything. 0940. Mr. Thorne requests 2007. Chateau Margaux be sent to the hot tub. I advised him it was a €4,000 bottle. He said, put it on the wife's tab. 14-20. Ms. Vance requests a full glam squad for her Instagram photos. Demands access to the bridge for a sexy captain photo. Request denied by security. 22 Tarst. Significant noise complaint from Deck 10 below the Poseidon suite. Miss Vance and Mr. Thorne were being intimate on the terrace. Security detail dispatched. And then there was Sienna's Instagram. It was a firestorm of tacky, geotagged content. Every post was a new level of cringe. Image: Sienna in a tiny bikini draped over the piano in the Poseidon suite. Caption: living my best life. My man knows how to treat a girl. Odyssey Sovereign Poseidon suite. Blessed, billionaire lifestyle. Image: Sienna holding up a shopping bag from the ship's Bulgari boutique. Caption: oops, I did it again. He just can't say no to me. Spoiled untouchable Bulgari shot new necklace. This stream of digital consciousness was being monitored directly by Claire Jennings, Eleonora's head of PR, 2 decks above in the owner's residence. Madame Chairwoman, Claire said, her face tight as she held out a tablet. We have a brand image situation. Eleonora was in a full-day meeting, reviewing the ship's new eco-friendly waste disposal systems. She took the tablet, her eyes scanning the photos. She didn't recognize this Sienna Vance. She was just another flashy, desperate woman. Eleonora felt a small, cold stab of pity. Then she stopped on the Bulgari photo. She zoomed in. It was a serpente necklace, a diamond and emerald one, the exact necklace she had pointed out to Marcus in a catalogue 2 months ago for their anniversary. He'd looked at the price tag and laughed. Ellie, that's absurdly gaudy. It's not you. He hadn't bought it because it was gaudy. He'd bought it for her. Eleonora's hand was perfectly steady. Claire, she said, her voice dangerously soft. What suite is this Sienna Vance staying in? Claire hesitated. Madame, she's in the Poseidon suite, with Mr. Thorne. Eleonora handed the tablet back. A silence settled over the room. It was the heavy, cold silence of a glacier before it carves into the sea. Thank you, Claire, Eleonora said. Increase the ship-wide Wi-Fi bandwidth. I want to make sure all of Miss Vance's posts go through. Boost her signal if you have to. Ma'am, I want the world to have a very clear picture of this vacation, Eleonora said. Please, continue with the ballast water report. The lie wasn't just unraveling. Eleonora was actively pulling on the threads. The biggest threat, however, came not from the staff, but from a passenger. Beatrice van der Meer was a New York society grande dame, a woman whose diamonds were as old as her bloodline. She was an Odyssey loyalist and a friend of the Salvatore family. She found Marcus at the Helios pool bar, trying to order a drink that wasn't on the menu. Marcus, she cried, her voice carrying across the deck. Marcus Thorne, what a surprise! I had no idea you were on the maiden voyage. Marcus froze. He hadn't seen Beatrice. This was a complication. Beatrice, lovely to see you. You look wonderful. Beatrice's eyes, sharp as a hawk's, flicked to Sienna, who was preening on a nearby lounger. And where is darling Eleonora? I was so looking forward to seeing her. I heard she was personally overseeing this ship's launch. Her father would be so proud. Marcus felt a drop of sweat run down his back. Eleonora? Oh, she's not here. A last-minute family emergency. In Geneva. Geneva, Beatrice said, her eyes narrowing. How dreadful. And this is my associate, Sienna Vance, Marcus said, the lie tasting like ash. We're closing a deal. You know, no rest for the wicked. Sienna, hearing her name, sauntered over. Hi, are you like a friend of Marcus's? Beatrice looked at Sienna's neon pink acrylic nails and smiled a smile that held no warmth. Something like that. I am a friend of his wife. Sienna, is it? What an interesting name. Tell me, what deal are you two closing? Oh, it's super top secret, Sienna giggled. I'm sure it is, Beatrice said. She turned back to Marcus. Well, you must send Eleonora, my love. A family emergency. So strange. I just spoke to her cousin in Milan this morning, and she said the entire Salvatore clan was in perfect health. She didn't wait for a response. She simply turned and glided away, leaving Marcus Thorne in a state of cold, stark panic. The ship suddenly felt very, very small. The incident happened on the fourth night, docked in the Santorini caldera. The ship was hosting a night in the Aegean, an elegant, all-white attire party on the main pool deck. Marcus, rattled by his encounter with Beatrice van der Meer, had decided to lay low. He and Sienna stayed in the Poseidon suite, ordering case after case of champagne and all the caviar you have. Eleonora, meanwhile, was not laying low. She was working. Dressed in simple black slacks and a crew-neck sweater, she was on a late-night, unannounced inspection of the Helios deck, a private, passenger-free observation deck just above her own quarters. She was reviewing the emergency lighting with the chief engineer. The generator switch time is 3 seconds too slow, Chief, she was saying. In a real emergency. She was cut off by a high-pitched, piercing shriek of laughter from the deck directly below. And then I told him, if it's not a Patek, I don't want it. The voice was followed by a deeper, familiar laugh, a laugh she had heard every morning for 10 years. You are terrible, Sienna, absolutely terrible. Now get over here. Eleonora froze. She walked to the edge of the observation deck and looked down. Directly below her, on the private terrace of the Poseidon suite, her suite, was a scene of utter debauchery. Champagne bottles were scattered, plates of half-eaten food, and in the bubbling, illuminated plunge pool were her husband and Sienna Vance, wrapped around each other. She watched, frozen, as Marcus kissed the woman's neck, as he laughed that booming laugh. He was a different person. He was happy. He was a person she had never seen. The chief engineer, a portly man named Stefan, looked at her, then at the scene below, then back at her. His face went pale. Madame Chairwoman, that is... Eleonora held up a single, trembling hand. The ice-cold control she had maintained for days was cracking, replaced by a white-hot, silent rage. She didn't feel hurt. She felt violated. He had brought this trash into her home. She turned to the engineer. Chief, your report on the generators. Have it on my desk by 0600. Her voice was a wisp of steel. Yes, ma'am. She walked, not ran, to her private elevator. She didn't go to her quarters. She went to the ship's secure communications room. Get me my legal team in Geneva, she told the communications officer. Scramble the call, now. While Marcus was playing in the pool, Eleonora was systematically dismantling his life. Paolo, she said into the secure phone, it's Eleonora. I want you to enact Article 7B of my prenuptial agreement, the moral turpitude and public disgrace clause. Yes, I have all the proof I need. I want a full asset freeze on all joint accounts. And I want you to draft a press release for Thorne Capital. Yes, his firm, announcing that the Salvatore Trust is pulling its 40% stake, effective immediately. She hung up, took a deep breath, and called Javier Mendoza in the Poseidon suite. Mr. Mendoza, this is the chairwoman. Is the suite's private line secure? Javier, hiding in the butler's pantry, was shaking. Yes, madame. They are on the terrace. They cannot hear me. Good. Tomorrow night is the captain's gala. My husband, Mr. Thorne, fancies himself a big shot. I want you to find his best tuxedo. Have it pressed. Lay it out for him. Find Miss Vance's most eye-catching dress. Tell them they have a personal invitation from the captain to sit at his table. Madame? Javier was confused. You want them at the gala? Oh yes, Javier, Eleonora said, a new, cold fire in her voice. I want them front and center. I want him to feel like the king of the world, right before he sees his entire kingdom burn to the ground. See to it. She hung up. The next day, Marcus was ecstatic. The panic from Beatrice was gone. Javier, you're the man, he boomed, seeing his best Tom Ford tux laid out. An invitation from the captain himself, at his table. Sienna, baby, you see? I told you I run this ship. I'm practically the owner. Sienna, oblivious, was preening in a garish, backless, sequined red dress that clung to her like sausage casing. Does this make my butt look good? I need a photo for my gram. Javier Mendoza simply bowed. The captain's cocktail reception begins at 1900, sir, in the Acropolis Lounge. As they left the suite, Marcus smelling of expensive cologne and ego, Sienna teetering on stilettos, Javier made one last call. Captain Volkov, they are on their way, as per the chairwoman's instructions. Understood. The captain's voice boomed back. All stations, stand by. The curtain's going up. The Acropolis Lounge was the Odyssey Sovereign's crown jewel, a 3-story marvel of glass and marble, with a grand staircase that snaked down from the deck above. It was designed to inspire awe. Tonight it was at its peak. A 12-piece orchestra played. Champagne flowed from a glittering ice sculpture of the ship. The ship's most elite passengers were all there, dressed in their absolute finest. And into this scene of refined elegance, Marcus and Sienna made their entrance. Sienna's dress was a siren-red beacon of too much, too tight, too short, too many sequins. Marcus was a preening peacock in his Tom Ford tux, his Patek Philippe gleaming as he waved expansively, as if greeting his guests. See, Sienna, this is power, he whispered, guiding her into the room. Look at them all. They know who I am. Marcus, darling, a voice cut through his fantasy. It was Beatrice van der Meer, draped in Harry Winston diamonds, and a judgmental smirk. Beatrice, Marcus said, his smile tightening. You're here. Of course I am. I wouldn't miss the Odyssey Sovereign's official naming gala for the world, she said, her eyes raked over Sienna. My goodness, Miss Vance, that is certainly a dress. Thanks, Sienna said, missing the barb entirely. It's custom. I'm sure, Beatrice said dryly. Marcus, you're just the man I want to see. You simply must meet the owner. She's giving a speech tonight. A fascinating woman. A true Salvatore. Marcus's blood didn't just run cold, it froze solid. A what? A Salvatore, Beatrice repeated, enjoying this. You know, the Salvatore family, from Genoa. They've owned this line for, 100 years. The daughter runs it all now, ever since old Enzo passed. Utterly brilliant woman. A real shark, they say. Keeps her family name, of course. Very European. Marcus's brain was frantically trying to connect dots that he had actively ignored for a decade. Eleonora's little hobby, Eleonora's family trust, Eleonora's maiden name, Eleonora Salvatore. No, he whispered. No, it can't be. Sienna, bored, was tugging on his arm. Marcus, get me champagne. I'm parched. Who is this old lady? Marcus, Beatrice pressed, her eyes glittering with malice. Are you all right? You look as though you've just seen a ghost. Oh, wait, silly me. You just heard your wife's family name, didn't you? It's her, The realization hit him like a physical blow. The ship, the crew's strange deference, the way Javier had looked at him. The cancelled booking that wasn't cancelled. He wasn't on a vacation he'd stolen. He was in a trap, a floating, billion-dollar cage of his wife's design. "We're leaving," he hissed, grabbing Sienna's arm. "What? No! We just got here. You said we were at the captain's table," Sienna yelped, trying to pull away. "I said, we are leaving. Now." He began to drag her toward the exit, pushing through the glittering crowd. "Don't see me! Don't see me! Don't see me!" He was chanting it in his head. He just had to get back to the suite. He'd lock the door. He'd... Bing bong! A soft chime echoed through the lounge. The orchestra stopped. The lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the podium at the front of the room. Captain Elias Volkov stepped up. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," his deep voice boomed. "Welcome to the Odyssey Sovereign's official gala." Marcus froze. He was halfway to the door, trapped by a crowd of people turning to face the stage. "It is my distinct honor," the captain continued, "to serve on this magnificent vessel. But the vision, the drive, the soul of this ship comes from one person." "Oh God," Marcus muttered. "She is a woman of unparalleled standards, a leader in maritime innovation and the heart of the Odyssey line. It is my profound honor to introduce the chairwoman of Odyssey Maritime, Miss Eleonora Salvatore." "Salvatore?" Sienna whispered, finally understanding. "Marcus. Like your wife, Eleonora." The main spotlight swung from the stage to the grand staircase, and there she was. The Acropolis Lounge was not a room. It was a statement. 3 stories high, encased in a sheer wall of structural glass, it offered a 270-degree view of the Santorini caldera, the lights of Fera glittering on the cliffs like a fallen constellation. A 12-piece orchestra played softly under a ceiling of suspended, hand-blown crystal orbs that mimicked the night sky. The air smelled of Dom Perignon, expensive perfume, and the faint, clean salt of the Aegean. Into this temple of refined, old-money elegance, Marcus Thorne and Sienna Vance made their entrance. Marcus was a conquering hero. His Tom Ford tuxedo was immaculate, his Patek Philippe a casual beacon of his success. He'd had 3 glasses of champagne in the suite and felt, quite literally, on top of the world. He was the king, and this was his court. Sienna, by contrast, was a visual car crash. She was poured into a backless, sequined red dress that looked less like haute couture and more like a desperate cry for attention. It was cut too low in the front, too high on the leg, and the fabric had a cheap, plasticine shimmer under the lounge's sophisticated lighting. She teetered on 6-inch Louboutin stilettos, her blonde hair, stiff with hairspray, piled into an elaborate updo. "Oh my God, Marcus," she breathed, her eyes wide as she filmed the room for her Instagram. This is insane. It's like the Titanic, but you know, better." "The best, baby. Only the best," Marcus smirked, guiding her with a possessive hand on the small of her bare back. "You see how they're looking at you? They know you're with me." And people were looking, but it was not with admiration. It was with the cold, appraising and faintly disgusted curiosity of a zoologist observing a new and bafflingly loud species. "I'm going to get us drinks," Marcus said, feeling a surge of pure, uncut ego. "No, wait, Javier said, we're at the captain's table. Let's find it. I want to be sitting when the big man arrives." Marcus Thorne, is that you?" The voice cut through the orchestral music like a velvet-wrapped icicle. Marcus turned, his practiced smile freezing on his face. It was Beatrice van der Meer. She was New York society royalty, a woman whose family had sailed on Eleonora's family's ships for half a century. She was draped in a Dior column gown of midnight blue, and the Harry Winston diamonds at her throat were, as she was fond of saying, part of the endowment. "Beatrice," Marcus said, his smile tightening. He hadn't counted on this. "What a wonderful surprise. You look stunning." Beatrice's eyes, sharp as a hawk's, did a full, slow scan. They started at Sienna's teetering heels, moved up the garish red dress, and settled on her surprised expression. "My goodness," Beatrice said, her voice dripping with lethal politeness. "That is certainly a choice, my dear." "Thanks," Sienna chirped, missing the barb entirely. "It's custom." "I am certain it is," Beatrice said, turning her icy gaze back to Marcus. "But Marcus, darling, what a shock to see you here. I thought you were in Geneva. Or was it Singapore? One of those dreadful, humid money places. And where, pray tell, is darling Eleonora?" Marcus felt the first tiny drop of cold sweat trace a path down his spine. "Beatrice, always a pleasure. Eleonora, she couldn't make it. A last-minute family emergency. In Geneva, yes." "Dreadful. Geneva," Beatrice said, tapping her fan against her chin. "How very strange. I just spoke to her cousin, Antonio, in Milan this morning. We were discussing the sovereign's new ballast system. Fascinating, really. And he said the entire Salvatore clan was in perfect health." Marcus's brain began to short-circuit. The music seemed to get louder, the air thicker. The what?" "The Salvatore clan, dear," Beatrice said, her smile widening. She was enjoying this. "You know, Eleonora's family, from Genoa. They've owned this shipping line for, 100 years, ever since old Enzo Salvatore built the first Odyssey." The dots, which Marcus had so willfully, so arrogantly ignored for a decade, began to connect with the force of a high-speed collision. Eleonora's little hobby, Eleonora's family trust, Odyssey Maritime, Odyssey Sovereign, Eleonora Salvatore. The room began to spin. "It's her ship. Heavens, Marcus!" Beatrice pressed on, her eyes glittering with malice. "You look as though you've just seen a ghost. Oh, wait, silly me. You just heard your wife's family name, didn't you? It is a magnificent vessel. Eleonora has done a marvelous job since her father passed. A true shark, that one. Utterly brilliant. Keeps her family name for all her business, of course. Very European. It's her ship, the cancelled booking that wasn't cancelled. Javier's cold, knowing eyes. The way the crew had parted for them. He thought it was for him. He was a fool. He wasn't on a vacation he'd stolen. He was in a trap, a floating, billion-dollar cage of his wife's design. "We're leaving," he hissed, grabbing Sienna's arm. The grip was no longer possessive. It was a desperate claw. "What? Ow, Marcus!" Sienna yelped, trying to pull her arm free. "We just got here. You said we were at the captain's table. I want my champagne." "I said," Marcus growled, his voice a low, terrified snarl. "We are leaving. Now." He began to physically drag her toward the exit, pushing through the glittering crowd. He ignored the offended looks, the gasps of, "Well, I never," from the passengers he shoved aside. "Don't see me. Don't see me. Don't see me." He was chanting it in his head. He just had to get back to the suite. He'd lock the door. He'd call his lawyer. Bing bong! A soft, melodic chime echoed through the lounge. The orchestra, in the middle of a complex Vivaldi piece, stopped. The lights in the lounge dimmed, and a single, brilliant white spotlight hit the podium at the front of the room. Marcus froze. He was 10 feet from the door, but he was trapped by a wall of people, all of whom were now turning to face the stage. Captain Elias Volkov, stepped up to the podium. He was a tall man with a face carved from granite and a dress uniform that was immaculate. He looked out over the silent crowd. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen." His deep, resonant voice boomed, filling the space. "On behalf of the crew, welcome. Welcome to the Odyssey Sovereign's official naming gala." "Marcus," Sienna was whispering, her voice a tiny, terrified squeak. "Marcus, what's wrong? You're scaring me. Who is that lady?" "Shut up," Marcus hissed, his throat so tight he could barely breathe. "It is my distinct honor," the captain continued, "to serve as captain of this magnificent vessel. But the vision, the drive, the soul of this ship comes from one person." Marcus was frantically, uselessly, pushing against the back of a large man in a white dinner jacket. There was no escape. She is a woman of unparalleled standards, a leader in maritime innovation, and the heart of the Odyssey line. It is my profound, personal honor to introduce to you the chairwoman of Odyssey Maritime, Ms. Eleonora Salvatore. Sienna, who had finally put the name and the context together, let out a tiny, choked sound. "Salvatore? Marcus, like your wife, Eleonora." The main spotlight swung from the captain, past the orchestra, and landed with flawless, theatrical precision at the top of the grand, sweeping staircase. And there she was. It was not Ellie. It was not the quiet, mousy, supportive wife who planned his dinner parties. This was a queen. She was wearing a custom, floor-length Valentino gown. The color was not just red, it was a deep, dark, arterial crimson. Her dark hair was swept up, revealing the impossible, glittering cascade of the Salvatore emeralds, a king's ransom, a necklace he had only seen in photos from the family vault. They made the Bulgari he'd bought Sienna look like a cheap Christmas cracker toy. Her face was serene, not happy, not angry. It was the calm, terrifying serenity of a glacier, utter, cold, unstoppable power. The entire room, 300 of the world's wealthiest people, was silent. They were not just quiet, they were holding their breath. Eleonora began to descend. She didn't just walk, she flowed. She was the owner, and this was her stage. The camera, which had been projecting the captain's face onto the massive, high-definition screens on either side of the stage, now followed her. Her gaze swept the room, cool and appreciative. Then her eyes found him. She didn't flinch. She didn't gasp. Her gaze, broadcast on 20-foot screens for everyone to see, simply landed. It swept past him, then snapped back, as if zeroing in on a target. She held his gaze for 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds. The entire room felt the temperature drop by 20 degrees. The technical director in the control booth, a man who had received his instructions from Captain Volkov an hour earlier, did the unthinkable. On the main, left-hand screen, he kept the tight, glorious shot of Eleonora, and on the smaller, inset screen on the right, he put a live feed of Marcus and Sienna, pale, horrified, trapped. A collective, stifled gasp went through the lounge. Eleonora reached the podium, the orchestra swelling, and then fading into a tense, nervous silence. She looked out at the crowd, her eyes still, somehow, locked on his. She began to speak. Her voice was cool, clear, and perfectly amplified. "Welcome," she said. "Welcome to the Odyssey Sovereign. For generations, my family has believed that the sea is a place of truth." She was speaking to the entire room, but her words were aimed like missiles at her husband. "We believe in building ships, not just of steel and glass, but of integrity. We believe in loyalty." She savored the word, letting it hang in the air. "We believe that what you do in the shadows, what you whisper in locked rooms, believing no one can hear, always, eventually, comes to the light. A murmur went through the crowd. This was not a speech. This was a public execution. Beatrice Vandermeer snapped her fan shut with a loud, vicious click. She's talking about us, Sienna whispered, her voice trembling. She knows. Oh my God, she knows. Thank you for joining us, Eleonora concluded, raising a champagne flute that a waiter had passed to her. Her eyes were burning into his, to the sovereign, and to the truth. The room, after a beat of stunned silence, exploded in applause. Eleonora, to her credit, didn't break her composure. She smiled, nodded, and stepped down from the podium. But she didn't go to the captain's table. She began to walk. Her crimson dress cut a path through the crowd, which parted for her as if she were royalty. She was flanked, suddenly, by the 2 security officers who had been by the stage, their formal wear doing nothing to hide the fact that they were built like refrigerators. She was walking directly, purposefully, toward Marcus and Sienna. Ellie, please. The name, his pet name for her, was a violation. It was a desperate, pathetic attempt to summon the soft, accommodating woman he thought he had married. Marcus took a half-step forward, his hands raised in a grotesque gesture of peace. He was a deal-maker, and this was just a negotiation that had gone public. Ellie, please, he repeated, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial, urgent whisper. Not here. Not in public. My God, what are you doing? Let's go back to the suite. We can talk. I can explain everything. This isn't what it looks like. This isn't what it looks like. Eleonora's voice was not a whisper. It was a precise, acoustic marvel, perfectly pitched to carry in the dead, stunned silence of the Acropolis lounge. She didn't move, and the stillness made her seem 1,000 feet tall. The spotlight still on her made the crimson of her dress look like it was still wet. Talk? She repeated, as if the word were a foreign object in her mouth. You had 10 years to talk, Marcus. 10 years of dinners, of anniversaries, of board meetings you never attended. Instead, you chose to lie. You stood in our apartment, in the home my money bought, and you lied to my face about Singapore. Her gaze was so intense, so locked on his, that Marcus felt a physical pressure in his chest. The crowd was gone. The music was gone. There was only this woman, a stranger, dismantling him, word by word. You took our 10th anniversary trip, she continued, her voice a low, vibrating thrum of controlled fury. The maiden voyage I planned, the ship I built, and you used it to bring her. Her eyes, for the first time, flicked to Sienna. It was not a look of rivalry or jealousy. It was the look a queen gives to a fly. You brought her, Eleonora said, her gaze snapping back to Marcus, into the Poseidon suite, the suite my grandfather, Enzo Salvatore, designed and built for my grandmother. You desecrated my home, my legacy, with this. The word this hung in the air, a drop of pure acid. It was too much for Sienna. The fear and confusion she'd been feeling for the last 10 minutes finally curdled into a high-pitched, panicked rage. This wasn't the fantasy. This! Sienna shrieked, her voice cracking. She stepped out from behind Marcus, a gaudy, sequined shield. Don't you call me this. He loves me. Not you. He told me. He said you were a frumpy, old, a business arrangement. He said you were boring in bed, and he was going to leave you. Tell her, Marcus. Tell this captain bitch. Sienna looked at Marcus, her eyes wide, waiting for him to defend her. Marcus was a statue of pure, abject terror. He was a man watching 2 nuclear warheads race toward him from opposite directions. Eleonora, however, merely raised a single, perfectly manicured eyebrow. She let Sienna's entire desperate tirade echo and die in the lounge. She let the raw, ugly truth of it, the things Marcus had said about her, settle over the crowd. Then she gave Sienna her full, undivided attention for 5 seconds. "Miss Vance," Eleonora said, her voice dangerously calm. "I am going to give you one final piece of advice, free of charge. You are in my suite, drinking my champagne, attempting to wear a dress that is, quite frankly, an insult to this lounge, and you are, tragically, with my husband. I believe you have overstayed your welcome. Your services are no longer required." She turned back to Marcus, her dismissal of Sienna so total, so absolute, that it was as if the other woman had simply ceased to exist. "And you," she said. That's when the 2 security officers, men who had been flanking the orchestra and looking like party guests, began to move. They were no longer guests. They were large, impassive, and moving with a purpose. They took up positions just behind Eleonora, flanking her like stone towers. Marcus saw them. He saw the coldness in his wife's eyes. He saw the hundreds of witnesses. He saw his world, which he had believed to be a fortress of steel, revealed to be a house of cards in a hurricane. "Eleonora, I'm sorry," he stammered. "Okay? I'm sorry. I messed up. It was a mistake. A stupid mistake. But don't do this. Think of our life. Think of the firm." "The firm?" Eleonora repeated. "Ah, yes, the firm." She gave him a smile. It was the most terrifying thing he had ever seen. "I have been thinking about it a great deal, Marcus. Specifically, for the last 3 hours, while you were otherwise engaged. You see, I had my team in Geneva review your credit. It's problematic. So, as of 1900 hours, all your personal and corporate credit cards were shut down." The blood drained from Marcus's face. This was not a marital spat. This was an execution. My firm," he stammered, the realization finally dawning, a cold, dark sun rising in his gut. "Thorn Capital, the Salvatore Trust, our biggest investor. Oh my God. Ellie, no. You wouldn't." "I would," Eleonora said, her voice flat. "And I did. The moral turpitude and public disgrace clause in our prenuptial agreement was also, as you clearly forgot, a foundational clause in the trust's investment in your company. The press release announcing that the Salvatore Trust is divesting its 40% stake just hit the wires. Your partners, David Chen, all of them, they are aware of your Singapore deal. I imagine your phone, back in the suite, will be quite active. If you can ever find a signal. You... Marcus was sputtering, his mind, once so sharp, now a blank, white field of static. "You ruined me!" He didn't whisper it. He roared it. The last vestige of the charming, powerful Marcus Thorne evaporated, leaving only the small, ugly, greedy creature inside. "You cold-blooded bitch! You ruined me!" "No, Marcus," Eleonora said. She stepped back as he lunged, a pathetic, half-formed movement that the security officers stopped with 2 hands on his chest. She looked at him, not with hate, but with a profound, cold clarity. "I didn't ruin you. You self-destructed. You were a man of such enormous greed. You didn't even bother to read the signature on the checks that paid for your life. You ruined yourself. You just used my ship to do it." She let that final, terrible truth land. Then she turned her head. "Captain Volkov?" The captain was there, as if by magic. "Madame Chairwoman, these passengers have breached our ship-wide code of conduct," Eleonora said, her voice rising, becoming formal, public. "They are a security risk, and They are clearly unwell. We are docking in Mykonos in 1 hour. For a medical disembarkation." "A medical?" Marcus was apoplectic, his face a mask of purple rage. "You're kicking me off the ship in the middle of the night. You'll hear from my lawyers. I will own this ship." Eleonora almost laughed. "What lawyers, Marcus? The ones I paid for? Or the ones you can no longer afford? Gentlemen." It was a command. The security officers were professionals. In one smooth, practiced motion, they had Marcus's arms pinned behind his back in a formal escort hold. "You can't do this!" he bellowed, his dignity shredding as he was forced to turn. Sienna, seeing her protector, her billionaire, being handled like a common drunk, finally broke. "No, let him go. Marcus, my stuff. I have a Louis Vuitton suitcase. You can't." Another officer, one who had been standing by the door, stepped forward and took her, far more gently, by the arm. And so, the walk of shame began. In front of the entire glittering, horrified and utterly fascinated gala, Marcus Thorne, the titan of finance, and Sienna Vance, the Instagram influencer, were marched out of the Acropolis lounge like common criminals. They were walked past the captain's table, past Beatrice Vandermeer, who watched them go with the grim satisfaction of a hanging judge. They were walked through the stunned, silent crowd, a sea of diamonds and judgment, all of whom were capturing this on their phones. Marcus was silent, his face a mask of pure, impotent rage. He knew. He was finished. Sienna, however, was weeping, her mascara running in black, tragic rivers. As she was pulled past the threshold, she made one last, desperate attempt. "My necklace!" she wailed, clutching at the Serpenti necklace. "My Bulgari necklace! He bought it for me! It's mine! You can't take it! Tell her, Marcus! Tell her it's mine!" Eleonora stood, unmoving, in the center of the room. She called out, her voice clear and carrying to the retreating figures. "It was charged to my account, Miss Vance. Consider it a parting gift." Sienna looked back, hope flashing in her tear-streaked eyes. "A reminder," Eleonora finished, "of what happens when you swim with sharks, and you are only bait." The doors to the lounge hissed shut, cutting off Sienna's final, anguished wail. The room was dead silent for 10 full seconds. The only sound was the faint hum of the ship's engines. Then, Beatrice Vandermeer, sitting at her table, snapped her expensive silk fan shut with a loud, definitive click. "Well," she said, to no one in particular, "at least the entertainment was first class. Captain, I do believe the orchestra was in the middle of a tango." The music, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence, started up again. Eleonora stood alone in the middle of the room, her crimson dress a pool of blood-red victory. She felt a single, uncontrollable tremor in her hand, and she clenched it into a fist at her side. The first part was over. Now, the rest of her life could begin. An hour later, the Odyssey Sovereign made an unscheduled silent stop at the new port in Mykonos. There was no fanfare. At 3:15 a.m., under the harsh glare of the port's sodium lights, Marcus Thorne and Sienna Vance were escorted off the ship by Greek port authorities. Javier Mendoza had, per the chairwoman's instructions, packed their belongings. Or rather, some of their belongings. He had packed one small, rolling suitcase for each of them, containing only the clothes they had worn on board, their toiletries, and their passports. The thousands of dollars of Bulgari and Gucci purchases, the Tom Ford tucks, they were regrettably lost. "Where is the rest of our stuff?" Sienna shrieked at the stone-faced port agent. "I demand to speak to the captain." The port agent, who had been paid handsomely for his discretion by Odyssey Maritime, shrugged. "Your ship, she is gone." Sienna and Marcus turned. The Odyssey Sovereign, her lights blazing, was already gliding out of the harbour, a silent, glittering behemoth that was leaving them in its wake. "Marcus!" Sienna wailed, turning on him. "Do something! You're rich! Fix this!" Marcus just stood there, his expensive linen shirt now hopelessly wrinkled. He reached into his pocket for his Amex. Declined. His Chase Sapphire. Declined. His corporate card. Card holder not authorized. He was, for the first time in his adult life, broke. "The ferry to Athens," the port agent said, pointing to a large, unglamorous and dirty-looking vessel at the far end of the dock. "She leaves at 4 a.m. Cash only." Marcus looked at the ferry. He looked at Sienna. He looked at the empty, dark ocean where his life used to be. The king had been deposed. Aboard the Sovereign, Eleonora Salvatore was not celebrating. She was on the bridge, standing beside Captain Volkov, a heavy wool blanket draped over her Valentino gown. She watched the lights of Mykonos fade until they were just another star in the blackness. Her head of PR, Claire, approached. "Madame Chairwoman, the call is ready." Eleonora nodded and went to the captain's private office. A secure video line was open to New York. On the screen was David Chen, Marcus's partner at Thorn Capital. His face was grey with exhaustion. "Eleonora, my God. Ms. Salvatore, the board. We had no idea." "You had no idea what, David?" Eleonora asked, her voice tired but firm. That you were the Salvatore Trust, that our largest investor, our only significant investor, was, well, you. He always just called you Ellie." "I am aware of what he called me," Eleonora said. "The divestment stands, David." The moral turpitude clause was clear. "And Marcus has breached it." "Eleonora, please," David begged. "You pull out. The firm is gone. We're bankrupt by morning. He's an idiot. He's a pig. But the rest of us, our families, don't let him take us down, too." Eleonora was silent for a long time. She looked at this man who had sat at her dining table, who had laughed at her husband's jokes about her little hobby. "Very well, David," she said. "I will not bankrupt the firm. I will acquire it. I am taking over Thorn Capital. My team will be in your office at 8 a.m. You will all now report to me. You will fire Marcus, strip him of his partnership, and remove his name from the building. Is that clear?" David Chen looked, for a moment, like he might cry with relief. "Yes, Miss Salvatore. Yes, Chairwoman. Absolutely." "Thank you." "Do not thank me," Eleonora said. "Just be better than he was." She cut the connection. She walked out onto the private observation deck, just as the first hint of dawn was staining the sky, a pale, watercolor pink. The sea was calm. The ship was steady. Her ship, her company, her life. She unclasped the Salvatore emeralds, her fingers steady. She had lost a husband. But she had, finally, found herself. She was not the goldfish. She was the ocean. And she was just getting started. Marcus Thorn learned a hard lesson. Never underestimate the woman you think is just a housewife. He didn't just lose his mistress, he lost his job, his reputation, and his access to the billion-dollar empire his wife had been running right under his arrogant nose. Eleonora Salvatore didn't just get revenge. She reclaimed her power, took over his company, and sailed off into the dawn on her own terms. This story is a powerful reminder that the quietest person in the room is often the most powerful. What did you think of Eleonora's incredible power move? Let me know your favorite part of her revenge in the comments below. And if you love stories where the powerful get what they deserve, like this video, share it with your friends, and make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story.